And right now, I want to welcome from the South Texas College of Law, Assistant Professor Josh Blackman is with us. Professor, how are you, sir?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I thought your piece at the American Spectator was very interesting, particularly given what's happened not only in Santa Barbara but over the weekend, the shootings of two police officers and apparently a concealed carry holder in Las Vegas, Nevada. You write, is there really an epidemic of mass shootings? Because, as you say, you do an internet search for mass shootings in common or mass shootings in epidemic, and you're going to get a ton of hits. You're going to get a ton of results.
Well, that's right. The media would also suggest that mass shootings are common, they're happening more frequently, and they constitute a very large percentage of deaths by homicide. The inconvenient truth is that's not true. Mass shootings, which are defined as 4 or more murders in the same incident, are very rare, constitute a tiny sliver of gun homicides, and are not happening any more frequently. If you actually look at the numbers and drill down to them, as they do in the American Spectator piece, you'll find that these are extremely rare shootings that just don't happen very often, yet they do attract a very large amount of attention in the media.
Look, I think understandably, in some regards, these are crimes that, again, they shock us. They are out of the ordinary, and that's one of the reasons why we are shocked by these crimes, because they don't happen every day. So it's one thing for the media not to downplay these stories or overplay these stories, but it's another thing for the media to suggest that there's something going on that isn't happening. When they suggest that there's an epidemic, that there's more of these occurring, that's simply false, you say.
That's right. To give you a couple examples, on the 6th month of Sandy Hook, there were 46 people shot and killed in a 72-hour period in Chicago, and you didn't hear about a single one of those in the media. I did the numbers. In the first 5 months of June in Los Angeles, not too far from Isla Vista, there have been almost 200 homicides, and you've not heard about any of them. The reason why these numbers are significant is that when you're discussing gun policy and various descriptions to make about this gun control or that gun control, the debate's often driven by these bizarre, rare, and tragic mass shootings, when the overwhelming majority of these gun deaths have very little to do with mass shootings. So the actual focus of the entire legislative debate is often skewed in this manner.
All right, so I guess the next question is, the Pew Research did a survey, I think it was now back in 2012, that showed most Americans are unaware that violent crimes actually have been dropping in this country for the past 20 years. When you add that to this, again, false impression that the media may want to give or tries to give, that these types of mass shootings are on the increase. Look, Josh, what you're left with is an impression among it's a false impression that most Americans have about their own personal safety and the chances of something like this happening, to them in their lives.
Oh, Pam, that's absolutely true. What you'll actually find, and I have a new article out with my co-author Shelby Baird in the Connecticut Law Review called The Shooting Cycle, what you actually find is that support for stricter gun control in this country has been dropping over the last 30 years or so. And whenever there's a mass shooting, for example, Columbine or Newtown or whatever, there's this brief spike up of people who want to support new gun control laws. But very soon after the shooting, that support fades. It's what's called regression to the mean. In fact, people go back to where they were before the shooting. In fact, even more so, it's a declining mean. In fact, after each mass shooting, there are fewer people who seem to want stricter gun control laws. So I think the American people, and perhaps they've caught on to the fact that while the passions and emotions following these tragedies can be quite strong in the immediate aftermath, this is not a sustainable basis to change our regulatory and legislative framework for gun control.
Now, and again, I think it's interesting you point out in the American Spectator, this doesn't mitigate the conversation or the gun control debate. It's not that you're saying, well, see, we can't have a debate now or no reason to have a debate now. That's not what you're saying at all. But what you're saying is when you're having this debate, when you're having this discussion, when you're talking about what policies and what laws should look like It needs to be based on the facts, on what's actually occurring.
Exactly. No, the debate about gun control should be based on the facts and what are the largest causes of gun violence. I mean, the overwhelming majority of homicides are not with AR-15s or any kind of rifle. They're with simple handguns, and they're not in mass shootings in schools or movie theaters or shopping malls. They're in drug deals gone bad. They're in gang homicides. They're various other forms of violence. So when you're trying to choose which legislative tools are used to stop gun death, aiming at high-capacity magazines or AR-15s is really only going at a tiny sliver of the unfortunate lives lost by guns. And the entire debate is often premised on emotions and large misconceptions of what actually is going on.
Talking with Professor Josh Blackman from the South Texas College of Law, and Professor, it's interesting you brought up this a piece that you just did with your co-author, where you take a look at the attitudes, the public attitudes, and how they change after these tragic events. Again, if you read the talking points guide for the anti-gun activists, it's called Reducing Gun Violence Through Effective Messaging. One of the things that they say is that, right after an event like this happens, get out there if you're a gun control advocate. Get on TV, make your statements, put out the press release, be very vague about what policies, in fact, don't even really suggest a certain policy or a specific policy, but just talk about the need for gun control. To a lot of people, Professor, maybe it's just me, but I think there are other Americans out there that feels kind of gross. That in this time, when again we're still in that sort of zone of confusion, we don't know all the facts on the ground. You've got people who are out there trying to take advantage of this, professionally, try to take advantage of this for their cause. Is it possible that one of the reasons why support goes down is that the American people just find that behavior to be gross?
Well, I think what you see is on the anti-gun control movement, they have to strike while the iron's hot, and they need to move quickly, because if they look at the data, they realize that every single day that passes, the American appetite for various gun control reforms just decreases. I remember President Obama, a few months after Newtown, said something to the effect of, the notion that 2 or 3 months after something as horrific as Newtown happened, we moved on to other things. That's not who we are. That's not who we are. Americans tend to have very short attention spans. And if the issue of gun control was not on the radar before the shooting, remember 2011, 2012, the person said not a thing about guns. Why do we suddenly think that when there's this tragedy, that all of a sudden all of our legislative priorities have to change? The reason why they have to strike while the iron's hot is because prior to this, there wasn't any movement for gun control. And eventually people go back to what they were doing before, and they say that was very sad, and let's talk about other policy, other things that are on their minds. So there is this need to hit right away, but it's been, at least on the federal level, largely unsuccessful. On the state level, in Colorado and otherwise, New York, Connecticut, it has been much more successful.
All right. Professor, again, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. It's good talking to you, and hope that we can do this again very soon.
Sure, anytime. Thank you.
You bet. Professor Josh Blackman joined us from South Texas College of Law, writing at the American Spectator.